You're listening to the Chris Maher Show, live on YouTube.
Alrighty, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the program. Gonna be a fun one today. Got a lot to kind of talk about. A lot of different things to kind of discuss and just kind of ponder on as the Flyers have made finally the new direction, the new era of orange, the new idea behind Flyers hockey, and the new everything involved with this team right now at the moment. And Daniel Briere officially hired as general manager. Keith Jones officially hired as president of hockey operations. And as I did the stream for the press conference on Friday afternoon. Tristan, what's up, buddy? We did that Friday afternoon. And a lot of the things that I was kind of thinking about again and just going off of was, everything was teamwork, right? All of that. There's been so much talk of who specifically does what and who goes to who and all of that stuff. So that's been one of the main challenges for this team in these past couple of years. It's just really been trying to figure out who does what and who has the say in this and who has the say in that. And it seemed like in this press conference, I'm curious if anybody else listening, has the same thoughts, I guess. How did you feel about it? Because for me, I felt like it was to the point. I understand it's, at the end of the day, it is just words, and you have to actually see the results, and I think you will, kind of as the season goes along, and I do have faith in this new regime of the team and all of that stuff. I think it's, as we kind of get further down the line and, as the season starts, that's when you're obviously going to see a lot of the actual decisions, and this summer is going to be pretty busy for the Flyers just in that idea, right, that there's going to be a lot of different changes. So I'm going to be getting into a couple quotes here just in a few minutes. As well, because there's a lot to kind of break down. A couple things. IIHF, that is one thing to kind of keep in mind. I am getting a call here, so let me pick this one up. Hello?
Hello, Chris. How are you?
Sean, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, how you doing? It's been a while.
Yeah, man. I think the last time you called in was the deadline.
Yeah, and the Bedard draft fiasco, I did like a groundhog and put my head in the sand after that. I was, I just couldn't show my face anymore. It was terrible. But but you were talking about the press conference. I mean, here's my thought. I mean, the corporate suits I could care less about. If I hear new era of orange one more time, I'm going to start drinking Drano. But, Tortorella is Tortorella. I love that guy. I don't know about everybody else. Briere, wait and see. But the guy that I was impressed with the most was Keith Jones. Yeah. I mean, he seemed like a guy that was confident that he could fill that role. He spoke well, made reference to the past while giving direction for the future.
Right.
So at least when it came to him and just the overall feel of it for me, I'd call it cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of where I'm at too. For those who watch me, and Sean, you're obviously one of them. I'm pretty optimistic at times. I try to be, at least, because it's been, well, for lack of a better word, it's been pretty bad these past couple years, as everybody knows. I think for now, my idea is this. There's really no reason to not be too negative, and there's really no reason to not be too positive. Give them a chance. I mean, it can't be anything worse than Chuck. It can't be anything worse than Dave Scott. I genuinely look at this as two guys who know the game, they know the team, they know the city, they know the fans, and I think when you put all of that together, and from before when you had brought, Chuck Fletcher out from experience, and everybody talks about experience, and they need this and they need that. Well, and it's so funny to me because everybody talks about experience, but they want Clark, Holmgren and Bill Barber gone. So that doesn't really make much sense. But anyway, I digress. More of it is it's just kind of like what you were saying was, Keith Jones was very confident. I mean, I think Danny Briere is very confident as well. I think it's very clear on what they know they have to do. They have an idea. I think. I was listening to some stuff earlier, and obviously Jonesy, he was on Frank Saravalli today, and he mentioned the blue line. So that's obviously a key thing, right? Because you still have a couple key factors to that. If Provorov's gone, if Sanheim's gone, obviously Kevin Hayes has been rumored, right? You still have the Ellis contract. So I think there's a lot of different things. But I agree with you. I think right now, you have to kind of wait and see what happens, especially, for Briere and Jones, just to see how the summer goes. If the summer goes right, it gives you a little bit of hope going into next year. But for right now, I think everybody's kind of in a good spot on essentially what needs to happen, what they know has to happen for next season.
Well, I understand the hesitancy of some fans, with the go with the old guard again, two former Flyers, et cetera, but I said this to somebody in the comments about this, this is a hell of a risk for Keith Jones. I mean, you had a cushy job as a national analyst and an analyst for the Flyers.
Yeah, oh yeah, he could have did that for another 20 years if he wanted.
Right, and you gave it up for this. I mean, I hate when people doom other people to failure without giving them a chance to try.
Yeah.
I mean, judge his body of work. If Keith Jones and Danny Briere crap the bed, and their moves are Fletcher-like in and of itself, then yeah, you can criticize them. But
right.
Let's see what they do first. All I know is this is a critical draft. I expect Briere to be very, very active, a lot of trades.
Mm-hmm.
I think, not to be cold-hearted, but I think there's going to be some GMs that are going to try to take advantage of him because of his newness with the job. But again, let's see what happens. But I think there's going to be wheeling and dealing, and
yeah,
we'll see what they end up with the 7th pick in the draft. It should have been Bedard. I was hoping. I told you to put Emma beside you, and you didn't do it. And look what happened. Damn you, Chris. Damn you.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think trades wise, I think there's going to be. I've kind of said this for a couple weeks now. I think that there's going to be some sort of move that we don't expect, and it's going to be soon because. And my example really is Sanheim. I do think that Sanheim is gone. I don't think they're going to trade Provorov. I think it's going to be Sanheim. And really, to me, the two guys that do get traded are Sanheim and Hayes out of the big moves. I think there'll be a couple more smaller moves, maybe some hockey trades, guys, 1-for-1 if they're able to kind of do something like that. But I mean, for now, I think everything is going to be draft night, and that's what I look at is the night of round 1. I would like them to get another first round pick and try to move into the middle teens, late teens, early 20s type thing. Just to get another first rounder, because you have the other pick from the O'Brien situation, his contract, and you still have time. If that ends up being a 2023 second, you still have time to get a 2024. If not, you'll have to pull some strings this year and end up getting that second rounder. So they still have time. There's still things to do. But really, I think what's going to happen is every guy that you think that they know they could get signed is going to get signed quick. Example, like how Zamula got signed pretty quick. I think they'll do Frost at some point. I've mentioned Extendo and Tippett. I would do that now because that number's not going to go down. I think there's a lot of different things that can happen, but it's going to be, obviously it's going to be pretty curious to kind of see what happens here, because there's so many different, balls in our court of what can happen, just going into really just the draft alone. And that's not even talking about free agency.
So what percentage, just out of curiosity, do you put on Tony D'Angelo coming back?
I think he's back. I'm kind of over the whole, and again, and Sean, I don't want you to think this is me, picking at you. I'm kind of over the whole, oh, well, if, this said player has like one bad season or does something wrong, or the coach, if there's an issue, we'll just trade him. Like, why can't we ever just work through our issues? That's kind of what I'm getting at with Tony, is like, I think he wants to be here. I think they understand it's going to be some growing pains. I think they're willing to kind of work through it.
Well, Tortorella hates everybody equally. I mean, he paints everybody with a broad brush, so don't be offended. He hates me too, and I've never even met the guy. But, I mean, again, as far as the press conference goes, cautiously optimistic. I don't hate the moves. I'm just going to sit back and see what happens. But I guess the next big thing, I assume, is the draft. So that's going to be when whatever the plan is starts to take shape. Right.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and that's really, I think it's already started. I really wonder if there's another move that's coming. If it's two, teams that are kind of out of the playoffs, obviously you can't really do much when playoffs are on, but, it'll be interesting to kind of see. But, Sean, thanks so much, dude. I appreciate you calling in. Always good hearing from you. And, I'm sure you'll be ragging at me on Twitter very soon. So
there's no ragging whatsoever. I've been very supportive on your meteoric rise to mediocrity. I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later. All right. See you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, that was good. A couple other things. Some of the quotes I kind of wanted to get into, and this is kind of what me and Sean were talking about. Briere mentioned lots of discussion. Says no for the playoffs right now for next season. Says it depends on what they do this summer. That can kind of play into a couple things. Going to get younger. Players will kind of decide that. So we'll see. I am getting another call here, so let me pick this one up. What's up, Dad? Go ahead.
All right, just to go off on what Sam said.
You're muffled, Dad. I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. I guess it helps when you put the phone to your mouth.
Yeah.
Just to go off with what Sean said there.
Yeah.
I love what Jonesy said about this is Ed Snyder's team.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that being said, what I want to see and what I think probably will never happen, but I want every damn sign in that building that says this is Comcast country down. It's Flyers country. That's what it should say. Okay? Not Comcast country. Nobody gives a shit about Comcast. Okay? I don't have Comcast. You know what I mean? Right now we're talking on a Verizon line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So don't tell me it's Comcast country. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I mean, I understand it. Certainly.
Well, seriously, you and I have been to different buildings. Have you ever seen the company name? Like, hey, this is Little Caesars country in Detroit? No. You know what I mean? This is Dunkin'. This is TD Bank country. This is Dunkin' Donuts country. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely fair. Like, and I get it because everybody's kind of fed up with the whole Comcast thing, and I think the one thing that they go ahead. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was going to say they need to lose their identity with the team. That's the problem. Is everybody think it's Comcast, and all Comcast is worried about is getting the next gritty product out there that's going to make them some money. And don't tell me I'm wrong.
Well, look. I mean, I think part of the whole thing with everybody is that they want just good hockey, and this is where all this comes from. I think, when back in 1920, I don't think anybody gave any, nobody really cared about what Gritty was doing. Nobody cared about Comcast. Nobody cared about any of it because the team was good.
You gotta stop saying. Hold on.
You know what I mean?
Stop saying. Yeah.
Stop saying what?
This 1920, because I think of the year 1920. Say the
1920 season. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Same thing.
But you're saying 1920, and I'm thinking.
The Flyers weren't around in 1920, so
I know that. I was born. They were
right.
born the year I was.
Okay. So whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think, for that season, the 1920 season, whatever, nobody really cared about any of that because the team was good. And, I think for right now, we have to get back to that. And I look, I understand everybody's frustration. Some certain things kind of like that, like they don't really, things like that don't really bother me that much because I don't know why. I've never really thought of that, to be honest, until you said it. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like for now, I liked what Hilferty had mentioned on the presser. He just came out and said that they weren't getting sold. Again, I think the message is there. I think it's strong. I think they all understand what they have to do. But it's just, I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like at this point we have to give this some time and and I know nobody wants to hear it. But for right now, my thing is just give these guys a chance, especially Jones and Briere, because you have a group here that I think understands what we want as a fan base, and I think that'll kind of resonate with everybody. So we'll see.
I agree with you there, because as far as I'm concerned, how many times have you heard me say they got to get rid of all them guys? But I'm willing to give these two a chance because of the exact reasons you just said. Okay, yeah. I'm willing to give that chance. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, that being said, when you interview Lindy later, mm-hmm. if she's got any pull, tell her, get them signs down. All right?
Okay.
Talk to you.
All right, say that.
Bye.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so some people, still upset, still need all this stuff to change. Couple other things. NHL playoffs, Leafs out, Oilers out, Kraken out, Dallas moving on, Panthers moving on, Canes moving on, Vegas and Dallas, Canes and Panthers. Canes-Panthers starts Thursday night. Vegas and Dallas Friday night. Ooh. Very very sunny, warm weathered conference finals. This is going to be interesting and fun. There was one thing, and before I have again Lindy Snyder coming on here at 6:25. A couple other things. There was one thing I wanted to mention. Michael Bunting is an unrestricted free agent. I was thinking about this the other night, and I was curious. I wanted to mention it on the show. 27 years old, unrestricted free agent. $950,000 last year in 21-22, 79 games played, 63 points, 23 goals, 40 assists. Really good season with the Leafs. Last year, same amount of goals, 23 assists, 49 points in 22-23. I don't know. If you could get Bunting at the right money, I would sign him. I know we have a lot of wingers, more on the right side than the left. But I believe, Bunting, can play center a little bit. I didn't really check, majority of his, face-off numbers because he's more of a winger. But as for just, him alone, I just thinking about it like this. Everybody talks about this like Kachuk thing. And having a guy like Matthew Kachuk and all of that stuff that kind of goes into it, he's not. It's pretty hard to get a guy like Kachuk. And Bunting is, if he's available, I think clearly a lot of teams are going to be after him. Can play center a little bit, center and wing, but 50% face off these past 2 years. It's going to be interesting, kind of, what happens here. But he is one guy that I would look at because I think we need a center. He's 27 years old. I think Torts and him could kind of go hand in hand. especially the way that Bunting plays. Like, he's physical, scrappy. He's kind of like Marchand. Sometimes he's just like a total pest sometimes. So little things like that, and he's got heart, all that stuff. Like, and guys like that, you can see it, and those guys are valuable. So we'll see. I just want to answer a couple things in the chat. Mr. Twister, what's up? Jeffrey, Amadeo, CL, Garrett York, dude, I'm sorry. Kraken, man. That was tough. Tough way to kind of lose that out. I'm curious, do fans kind of want, and I was thinking about this, and it's kind of something that I've heard a couple times. Does anybody want TK or Carter Hart traded? Because I don't. And, I've been thinking, everybody says, oh, well, they should trade these guys to spark a rebuild. Well, I'm like, say to myself, well, the rebuild already started. So, regardless of if they didn't say it or do this or that or the other, it already started. It was last season was the start of it. So, for those that want those guys to be gone, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't want it. Jay, you're saying to trade TK? Okay. How come? I'm curious. Because for me, for TK, it's like, all right, well, he just got to one of his best seasons. If he played and he was completely healthy, he would have actually got more games played, more points, all that stuff. The hard thing is really interesting to me. Because we've waited for a goaltender since Ron Hextall, and obviously Hextall played 2 stints. But you wait for a goaltender for that long, and then as soon as you have this like couple years of being like pretty bad in the 55 years that they've been a team, I think 56, we should trade our franchise goaltender, 24 years old. Like, I don't get it. And I just say to myself, that's like, you have Hart, and everybody says, oh, the Flyers have Urson. Well, like, Sam Urson played 6 games. Like, I don't know. It's very hard for me to understand why people would want to trade Carter Hart. I'm not too sure, to be honest. It's an interesting conversation because, like, my thing is just because we're bad, we're just gonna trade him, and like, I get it. Everything's on the table. I'm not saying the Flyers aren't gonna sit here and obviously they're gonna have conversations about it. I'm sure. I mean, why wouldn't you? You're at that point in this thing where you have to make some sort of changes that might be different. But for me, that's a hard thing to push for me. Like, especially if you don't get the right return. I'm not sure, man. I think, Jay, I agree with that. I do think there are certain players that you kind of can understand where that's at. But it's really hard for me to just, I don't know, man. Like Jonesy mentioned the blue line. Like the way Jonesy mentions the blue line on the show with Frank Saravalli, I don't know, man. It's really hard for me to just wonder why they would trade Hart like that. And I'm not saying that they wouldn't get a good return, but it's just like, it's for a couple years. I mean, unless Hart wants out. If Hart wants out, then there's nothing we can do. And he's obviously got 1 year left on his deal. But we'll see. It's interesting. Again, we got Lindy Snyder coming up here in a couple of minutes, and about a minute actually. This will be interesting. Lindy's a really good guest. Super nice. Really excited for this one. But this has been planned for a little over a month, so we're kind of glad to kind of get this lined up and everything. Yeah, Burns is. I agree with you that I like Burns too. I think he's one of them guys that, like, I would just really want to know what his day with the cup would be like. Like, what would he do? Like, there's so many things that guy could possibly do, and That's gonna be crazy. Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it, dude. Yeah, Burns is fun, dude. Burns is he's just good. Like he's what, 36, 38, 37, 38, something like that. He's pretty high up there in age and everything. Like it's crazy. We'll kind of see what happens with that. But again, just want to, before I kind of get on with Lindy here, calling in now. Remember, this is the guest hotline by Puck Cups. But here she is, Lindy Snyder. Hi, Lindy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. It's been a little bit, but we got it figured out. Again, thanks for doing this.
No worries.
So obviously in these past couple of days, there's been some different things with the Flyers, and it's obviously been a couple, tough years for this team and obviously this franchise. And what are some of the things that you kind of see as important, just building blocks for the team kind of moving forward?
Well, I mean, obviously it's imperative, that we make some great trades, but I think in any rebuilding period, you have to have patience, and rebuilding is literally building block, sort of brick by brick, the bricks, being the players, and that you're going to have a lot of change this year. But I think the most important thing we have is a change in leadership, which I think is very positive. And, I think in the past few years, there was an attempt to really, be loyal and faithful to the guys, that were at the top and leading, and things weren't working. And sometimes you have to sort of cut your losses and make big change, which I think is exactly what's happening right now. And and I'm very excited about it for a lot of reasons. So I think this is what needed to be done.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of fans were kind of in the same boat. Everybody was kind of up in arms, and they wanted change. And I think the biggest thing was, the team kind of, it felt like that they lost the love for the history of the team. And the Flyers, even though that they've only won 2 cups, but they have a lot of history outside of that, and there's a lot of different great moments for the franchise outside of just winning just 2 cups back to back. And again, it's obviously kind of impossible to kind of answer this, but how do you honestly think that obviously your dad, Mr. Snyder, would have reacted these past couple of years? Like what are some of the things that you think that he would have done to kind of get this back on track?
Well, first of all, in terms of hockey operations side, he would have, worked on probably making change in potentially scouting, and certainly having his eye on, key players for the future. I think that there were some changes that have been made recently, in the front office that had to happen because we've had a change in culture, which I think the fans have noted and seen and felt and really reacted to. And to your point, while we may have only won 2 cups, you never went to a game and had a lousy time, because you had a team with a fighting spirit that throughout the course of the franchise's history often were underdogs. But the city of Philadelphia always got behind them nonetheless. And there has always been an unbelievable bond, I think, between, the Flyers fans and the team itself. And I think that the community, the fans, could sort of feel the love from the team, and the team could feel the love from the fans. And I do believe that, our fans have been rightfully frustrated, but, louder, a little more angry, but then again, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when we weren't doing so well, you didn't really have social media playing such a big part
Right.
in being able to see and feel the expression of our fan base. And don't think that doesn't have an effect on the team itself, on the
Yeah.
players. And some of the stuff that I've been tweeting about is sort of like attitude, attitude is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to, have a fan base and an organization that believes in itself and a fan base believe in the team, and really sort of to get behind what they're trying to do right now. I think that's critically important for the sort of the attitude of the actual players. It
Right.
matters
Right.
a lot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and just going off that too, just keeping in mind of the history and all that. And that's why I think that, like Briere and Jones are two good hires, because, it's two guys that they know the city, they know the fans, they know the team, they know what the fans would want. And I think at the same time too, they understand. And, I've never understood why there's always been that, and really it's more specifically for Bobby Clark, Paul Holmgren, and Bill Barber of, these guys don't know anything, type of thing, like get them out of here type thing. Well, it's not fair to those guys, because those guys, they might, to me, everybody sees it a different way. And I think that those guys, it's not fair to them to say that they don't know the game just because of certain things that have happened in these past couple of years. Obviously they went with experience before in Chuck Fletcher, and that didn't really work out. My thing, especially with now Danny and Keith Jones being hired, is give them a shot, give them a chance. I mean, I think there's a reason that they're hired. I think they're both smart guys. I think they understand the game. Is that something that you would that you would probably agree with?
I 100% agree. And I also agree with your assessment relative to Holmgren and Billy, et cetera, that these guys, of course, they know the game, and they do know what they're doing. And I think you get a couple of guys in the press that put that out there, and I think they're just wrong. They're, I think, 100% wrong. It would be hard-pressed to find guys that know the game better than them. But I think that, fans became very frustrated, and when things aren't going well, the tendency for humans is to look for something or somebody to blame.
Right, exactly.
And I don't think there's one or two or three people to blame. I think, it's just been a perfect storm. And look, team fortunes in terms of win and loss, it is cyclical. You've got spectacular teams and guys that eventually age out, and you have to always be preparing for the future and be building up your next group of young, very major talent in order to be as consistent as you can across time. But it doesn't always happen. You get injuries, you get guys that retire, and you have to rebuild the talent on the team, which is what we're doing. And look, we've been here before. We've had some pretty bad years in the past. So I think the moves are right. And I think, to your point, yes, those guys know hockey, and they know Philadelphia, and they know the team. And I think that you're going to see a big change, because there is already a big change in sort of overall attitude.
No, for sure. I mean, especially too, because, and I know everybody's, and like past couple of years, a lot of people have looked at the catchphrases that they've used, whether it's, fueled by Philly or all that stuff. Now it's the new era of orange. And really, if you think about it, it is, because it's not, it's not just, a new thing. Obviously, the team's rumored to get new jerseys, and that might be the color and all that stuff too. So that kind of plays into it. But kind of at the same time, this entire thing is new. It's two guys who haven't had any experience before put into these roles, and they understand, again, kind of like exactly what the two of us were saying was, it's all of, what they know and what they understand about the city.
Right. And they didn't get there by themselves. I mean, what I want to do is give really amazing credit to Dan Hilferty, because Dan's a Philly guy.
Yeah.
And Dan grew up here. Dan is a fan, you know, he's passionate for the team, and it shows. And I think he's he's a he's a brilliant guy. He's run a major operation in his past career, and he's done his homework.
Yeah.
And the main thing is, here's a leader who says, you know what, we want to get back to our roots,
Right.
and our roots aren't only about winning. It's about having a winning attitude, which comes from a winning culture, a philosophy that, okay, we didn't do so well today or yesterday or last week, but we know what our goal is. We know what we're going for. And I think part of the thing that my dad brought that I think people were so responsive to was that he never gave up. Never. He would get as disappointed as our most furious fan, or so frustrated or upset, but never in his mind ever did he think of us as losers.
Yeah.
Even when we were losing, we were not and are not. We're not losers.
Right.
That's the point.
Yeah. And honestly, I think part of that too, that's kind of similar to what I was, going to mention here in this next question was, at some point you have to, because honestly, if you think about it, everybody mentions selling the team and getting rid of this guy, and the only way that this will change is if they sell them. Well, really, this is the only time since the entire team's, just coming about and becoming the actual Flyers themselves since 1967 that they've gone through a problem like this. And, it's been that long. So my thing is just, I think a lot of us would immediately miss it if it was gone. I know specifically I would, and I don't agree with selling. And I was glad that Dan Helfrey, kind of like what you were saying too, he just came out and said that they're not getting sold. And I think that was great. I think everything they said was good, specifically when Keith Jones had just mentioned the Philadelphia Flyers are back. Just kind of going off that too. Dan Humphrey, kind of like what you mentioned as well, he said, I can't be like Ed Snyder, I can only be myself. And I think that's part of that is good because they understand the past. They understand that Ed Snyder, obviously your father, was, different in ways and very competitive. And just kind of going off of that, for you, do you think that his devotion to just the good of the NHL itself was just underrated or kind of overlooked?
I think it's sort of neutral in the sense that, it's something he was committed to and felt was extremely important, for the health of the league and the ultimate growth of the league. But I think that was something he felt was critical for all teams. And so it's not as if he felt a need to be noted for that.
Right.
For the work sort of behind the scenes for the benefit of the NHL. And I think there were a lot of owners doing that. And a recognition, early on, hockey in America was still very regional. It was a very regional sport. And because it was so regional, for example, you couldn't get national television contracts.
Yeah.
So everything was more regional or eventually on cable. And so the health of the NHL, whether it was individual other teams, ultimately helping other teams helped the entire league in all kinds of ways. And expansion of the league being a goal so that we were in regions where you never saw hockey, like in the South. There was no hockey down there. There were no hockey fans down there. California, just places that hockey was not a presence. And, I think his attitude was that if people were exposed to hockey, they would love it.
Right.
And that's true. And you look at the expansion of the league and you've got very strong franchises sort of all over the country. It's not any longer just this regional concentration. So I don't think that it was underrated or overlooked. I think that, I think for Dad, that was part of the job, part of the vision, long term for hockey.
Was just growing the game itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And getting people interested young. We always felt like if you went to 3 games, you were hooked,
Yeah.
which I think is true. And there's nothing like a live hockey game and the adrenaline in the building, and
Oh, it's so true. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't think he would have cared whether anybody noted the sort of devotion to the league itself. I don't think that would have mattered. He just knew it mattered overall.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely fair because, like, the more you think of it, and kind of like what you were saying, like, just this year alone, right? You have Carolina, Florida, Vegas, and Dallas, all in the conference final. And Carolina, they've obviously struggled for a little bit. Now they're one of the best teams in the league.
Right.
And I recently was at one of their games in March, which ended up being against the Flyers, and that arena is incredible. And I think that's kind of like what you were saying. You can kind of tie it into is that if it's better for the game and you can grow the game like that, was Mr. Snyder's kind of idea. Are there any favorite hockey memories with your dad that you have? Like anything that just comes straight to mind? Again, I don't really mean to put you on the spot, but
Oh, not at all. There's so many. Growing up, I remember in the early days, my dad used to wear cufflinks.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had what was then in the Spectrum called the Super Box, where he sat, and there was a little sort of shelf where you could put your drink down, and every time something went wrong, well, not every time, but when something went really wrong or the refs made a horrible call, he would bang his fist down on that shelf, and invariably injured himself quite often by smashing his cufflink into his own wrist. But I remember my mother always having to replace his cufflinks because he smashed so many of them over the years. And things like that. Or one of my favorite memories is being a kid and you had an allowance, and if we ever wanted a little more money or a little more extra, more than our allowance, we only would ever ask him after a win. We knew, like, his moods were totally dependent on
the Flyers win. Yeah,
100%. And we timed certain things, delivering bad news. I got a C on that test. We only tell him after a win, always. Right. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
The Flyers. For us, it never felt like going to a game. Like it never felt like something outside of our normal.
Outside of your life, yeah.
Right. It was just completely part of our life. 100% part of it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you remember about the 2010 run?
Let me see. I'm thinking. Not in particular. Give me a clue what you're thinking about.
I don't know, just anything. Like anything from that run. If it was, from the last game of the year and the shootout, to, the comeback against Boston, the 3 shutouts in 5 games for Michael Layton and against the Canadiens, anything.
Well, those are all standout moments. For example, it was our home record was pretty darn good that year. But it's hard to say. I can't, not really in particular that season. I mean, there's so many.
Right.
But but that was a tough year for me personally. I was a little bit less focused because I had a health scare that year, so I was kind of a little out of it, to be honest. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So,
but it's funny because I was thinking about we talk about how rough it's been, for us, the last couple of years. But look, people forget, like, 2006 season, with the longest losing streak.
Oh yeah, worst team. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there have been years, that things were pretty rough. And, look, you move through it. It's not the end
Right.
of the road.
Exactly.
It's just a step along the road.
One of the main things that I've been kind of telling people with this is that really, and it's so like easy to say, but like to me, I've always just kind of looked at this as just like the Flyers, like they can't suck forever. I mean, like they're not going to be this bad for however long everybody keeps saying. They're going to be like, oh, this is going to be like another 10 years. It's just not true. And obviously, like this stuff takes time. And it's, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a couple painful years. And, obviously Danny B's talked about even getting younger than this past year. But I think for now, I really do feel like that the team's in a good place. That's kind of where I'll end it.
Well, they are in a good place because, look, we have nowhere to go but up.
Right.
Right? Now's the time. Okay, there's nowhere to go but up. And, if everybody who watches a game thinks about their own life, their own business, you don't win every battle, but it doesn't mean you stop trying to win the war.
Right.
Okay? And ultimately, our goal is to win the war, and we're going to win. And there's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah. I think, I agree. I think that's perfect. Lindy, thanks so much. I appreciate it. It's always good hearing your insight, and hopefully I'll be able to do this again soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. I'll talk to you. Bye, Lindy. There we go. Lindy Snyder. That was awesome. Thank you again to Lindy for hopping on. Always good insight, hearing from her as well, and obviously stuff from about her dad and everything else. But that's all I got for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks everybody so much for all the support. As always, I got a lot of stuff coming. I am building the website and expanding the brand. So if anybody's interested in any of that, you can message me on Twitter, Instagram. Email me. My email is in my YouTube. It's in the about section of my YouTube channel. Thanks everybody so much for all the support. Everybody in the chat, Mr. Twister, Philly Ghost, Jeffrey, my dad, Sean Fitzpatrick, CL, Dank, Bill Soper, Philly Ghost, Garrett, a couple more, Tristan, Jay, Jeffrey, Amadeo. I think that's it. Thanks everybody again. Always good on the show here. It was a lot of fun. I love doing this. Thanks everybody so much for all the support. And I'll see you guys all next week.